This week in FDA advisory panel, this is from CBS and the Associated Press, is they're taking a look at food dyes, artificial food dyes. All the ones that they're looking at are all made out of oil products. And I don't have the complete list in terms of the actual names of the chemicals. But in 1980, I wrote one of the first papers on this topic published in the Journal of Orthomolecular Psychiatry. In 1978, I became very good friends with Dr. Ben Feingold, who in 78 had published, or maybe it was 77, had published a book called Why Your Child is Hyperactive. And in that book, he proposed that hyperactivity, jittery, nervousness, inability to sit down quietly, that those characteristics were caused by a sensitivity to salicylate-based food additives. Now, salicylates are a family of naturally occurring chemicals. They appear in large... Aspirin is almost pure salicylate. It's acetylsalicylic acid. There are measurable levels of natural salicylates, very high levels in wintergreen. If you chew on wintergreen leaves, I mean, the actual stuff grows in the north, even in the winter, which is why it's called wintergreen. And in raspberries and in a variety of other berries. So when you put a kid on a salicylate-free diet, you can't just, it's not just a matter of taking the food additives out. Although the food additives are thousands to tens of thousands of times more potent in some cases, at least according to Feingold's research, than the natural salicylates in producing this hyperactive behavior. And at the time, I was running a community for abused kids in New Hampshire, the Salem Children's Village, salemchildrensvillage.org, if you want to check it out. And we had not yet started, but we're contemplating starting a school for said kids, hunterschool.org. It's there now. And we actually found that there's two categories of ADD out there. And what I want to say to those of you who may think that you're ADDers, I call them hunters in a farmer's world, is that it may or may not have anything to do with food additives. And be very careful. I mean, this story has the potential to really screw some things up in terms of how people move forward, how they make decisions about their lives, all this kind of stuff. First of all, true, and I'm even reluctant to call it ADD because it has the word disorder in it. I don't think it's a disorder. I think it's simply a genetic predisposition. It's a temperament. But ADD has three primary characteristics: distractibility, impulsivity, and a high need for levels of stimulation. Then they came along with when they came out with some new drugs that they could give to kids to calm them down, they came out with another category. I think this was in the DSM-3R revised, and they added hyperactivity to that, and now it's called ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder. Let's deal with hyperactivity separately. ADD, distractibility, impulsivity, high needs of a high level of stimulation. My theory was, and I wrote this in a book in 1992, wrote about an article about it in 1980, one of the very first ever published, and wrote a very early book on it, which I was just viciously attacked by the medical establishment for a decade and a half. And now, in peer-reviewed journals, they have come out and said, yep, Hartmann was right. My theory was that this was a genetic positive for some people. That if you lived in a hunting-gathering society in ancient times for the first 160,000 years of human history, if you lived in a hunting-gathering society and you were distractible, that is, you're walking through the forest looking for lunch and you're scanning everything around you, you're more likely to notice that rabbit flying by that's going to be your lunch. Similarly, impulsivity. If you're going through the forest looking for lunch and you're chasing a rabbit with your spear and a deer goes by, you have time to sit down and take out a pen and pad and say, let's do a risk-benefit analysis. Let's see. Rabbit, easy to catch, not so much food. Deer, harder to catch, a lot more food. What are the probabilities? You can't do that. You've got to make an instant decision. You've got to act before you even realize you thought about it. That's called impulsivity by the dictionary definition. And third, the need for high levels of stimulation. The kind of person who would succeed the best in a hunting-gathering world that I'm describing is the kind of person who would wake up in the morning and say, you know what sounds like fun? Let's go out there and in that jungle or in that savanna or in that world, where there are things that want to eat me as much as I want to eat them and find lunch. Now, the flip side of that, of course, is distractibility. If somebody was highly focused and they're walking on the trail through the jungle and they're just staring at the trail, you know, the lion or the cheetah or something is going to jump on their back and eat them, and they're going to be weeded out of the gene pool. So they don't do so well in a hunting-gathering world. Impulsivity. Well, actually, let me shift this. Where these become a liability is in the farming world. When we shifted to agriculture 10,000 years ago and we put fences around land, first of all, we no longer needed distractibility. You don't need to be scanning the world. In fact, it's better to go out and be able to just, plant rice plant after rice plant after rice plant or wheat after wheat after wheat without being distracted. So we stopped valuing distractibility. We started valuing focus. Similarly, impulsivity. Rather than making a quick decision, you want people thinking in terms of a year-long period of time. So, you can't say, oh, that week last year was great. Let's try ragweed this year. That was boring. It was great, but it was boring. You can't do that. And the high need for stimulation. What happens in a farming world with the people who are easily bored is that they get on ships and come to America, which accounts for why we've got so much ADD here. Now, after the break, I'll throw in it'll have to be after the bottom of the hour. I'll throw in because John Nichols is coming on. I'll throw in the food additive piece of this and how it's related and completely unrelated to this whole ADD thing. Because an FDA advisory panel is looking about, should we put warning labels on foods to warn parents that this stuff may make their kids crazy? Well, not crazy, hyperactive.